All right, welcome back, everyone. It's COMP229 in the summer 2021 semester, and it is week 8. You guys are just back from a break. I think we all had a nice break, or most of us did, over the last week or so. It's week 8, part 1 of our broadcast, probably going to be the only part for this week. And I'm recording it like I always do on the Monday for all the sections that I have throughout the week. So this week is a special kind of week because although it says Intro to Angular, what we're actually doing is we're going to talk about the project. We're going to do group forming this week. And there's some things that we're going to do that I'm going to talk about in a second. So what we're actually talking about here is that we're sitting in the second half of semester. And as you can see, we've already completed assignment 1, 2, and midterm tests. I'm in the process of completing all the marks for assignment 2 and midterm tests, which should be up this afternoon. In the evening, actually probably this evening, which will give you everything that all your marks should be up to date by tonight. One thing that you'll see is that most people have done fairly well on assignment 2 and the midterm. Midterm was fairly easy for those who completed it. There were some people who did not complete the midterm. And so, for those people, I can't really produce a mark. Some people also forgot to hand in their YouTube recordings, and I can't produce a mark for those either. So remember that your YouTube recordings, because we are live and online, and all those things are required for you individually and for your group as well. Okay, so in the second half, we're doing something different. Notice that there is a project that we're going to be working with, which is broken down into 5 parts, starting with your team contract, which is due, if you notice, this week, week 8. Right, and it's worth 5% of your final grade. So I'll talk about the team contract in a bit. Then next week, week 9, your first release is due. It's really quick, right? And that is worth 10% of your final grade. So first release means that you and your team are going to get together and complete one part of your project. Your project is broken down into 3 releases, really. First release, authentication release, and your final release for your project. Fairly straightforward stuff, and it's broken down over several weeks, so it's not going to be something that you're going to have a short time to do. You have at least a few weeks to get everything done, and there will be no final exam or test in this course. There is just a final presentation, which for now I'm going to book for you guys just with a YouTube video. And I was going to do things live, but unfortunately for some people who are combining in sections 2, 3, and 4, that probably won't be possible because everyone has different schedules. And so what I'm going to just make it do is everything's going to be online. So that means you do a final video for your final presentation. There will be no physical requirement for you to be here. I'll be here to answer questions and that kind of and meet with you. One thing that we're going to be doing in the second half, which is a lot different than the first half, is there will be no technical demo that I'll be doing. I'm not going to be doing technical demos for the second half. The first half was to get you guys going, and what I wanted you guys to do was kind of have some technical advice and coaching, which is what I did with you guys, to push you to have everything ready so that you know how to create a Node.js project, how to create kind of all the stuff that you need for, and understand the way the project has been created and those kind of things. So that's what I did with you guys and for you guys for the first 7 weeks of semester, or 6 weeks plus your midterm, right? So the second half is not like that at all. The second half is more of, I'm going to help you manage your project. So you're doing a project, and the project is going to be an agile project. So we'll talk about that in a bit and all that kind of stuff. So if you look at the schedule then for the second half, what you'll notice is that, sure, I talk about Angular and TypeScript and all that kind of stuff. I also want to remind you that Angular for the project is an option, okay? It's not required. What we've done over the last little while is realize that Angular is neat, and you could also choose to do React if you want as well. But the idea is that you'll be making a project, which I'll go into in a very short a bit. And so the modules online, if you want to push yourself to learn Angular, which I highly recommend, is a good idea to learn some kind of front-end framework. that's on you if you and your team decide to do that. Now, you might be very busy. You might have other courses that are also very demanding. Most likely you do. We're also running online where you may or may have not met the people that you're working with on your project physically. You're learning or kind of discovering who they are, online. You've met them online or whatever, or you've combined in Discord groups, as an example. And so this is the reason why, like last time, we've kind of made it so it's a little bit more flexible and you're allowed to use Express as a front-end framework. So, which you already know because you've been using Express for assignment 1, assignment 2, and your midterm test. And that's perfectly fine to do. Okay, so the structure goes like this. This week, you'll be making your team contract and you'll be starting your first release. That's when it's assigned. Your first release is due week 9. So that's next week. Okay. Then next week, you'll get your authentication release. You'll get the details for that. And that will be due week 11. Okay. So that's a couple weeks out. Okay. What we're going to do is we're also going to meet next week because there are some individual components of your project. Your project is broken down into both group components, so you and your team make a release, and there's also individual components where you actually do a peer review, talk about your group members, as well as you also do a weekly report of what you did, right? So in other words, if you don't hand those pieces in for yourself, you'll lose individual marks for your project. You need to do something every single week from now until the end of semester. That's how it goes. All right, so this is where people don't understand or they lose track of this stuff, and that's why I'm going through it with you. So then, what does this look like? So this week, what we're going to be doing is team forming for the group project. So this little video we're doing is going to be a little bit shorter, and then I'm going to work with you guys to help you with team forming. I'll talk about how to do that. Then your group project has been released. We'll talk about what the group project is. There's also a video recording on eCentennial already for all this kind of stuff. I've already released the content for you, so please take a look at this. Your first project, part 1, that is a team component, is due this Friday. Okay, so that is the team component that's due, right? And your project part 2 is due next Friday. Right? Next Friday, it means like 1 week from today, 1 week from this Friday is your first release, right? So it's something that you're going to be building. Tech-related work for this week is you're learning Angular, right? If you want. And you can also continue to convert your Express to an API. We've kind of talked about that already. I've already gone way ahead and kind of discussed with you how to do this. For those people who are in section 1 watching this video, then you can certainly watch the video online on how to do that, or even watch the YouTube playlist of mine from the first half of semester with the other groups, group 2, 3, and 4, and you can see what I've done to convert Express to an API as opposed to actually this is not. Sorry, let me take that back. Express, I haven't converted to an API yet. What I've done instead of converting Express to an API is I've actually reformatted Express so it's an MVC. That's what I meant. Okay, so if you don't have that, that's cool. The other thing that I didn't cover with Group 1, because I didn't have you, is so those people who are part of Section 1, as an example, Section 1 didn't have TypeScript for me. I taught TypeScript to Section 2, 3, and 4. So if you're part of Section 1 and I'm managing you this half of the semester, then you didn't have TypeScript. TypeScript you'll be learning if you're going to be doing Angular on the eCentennial videos that I've shared with you. But again, if you're not going to do if you're not going to do Angular, you're going to stick with Express, you won't need TypeScript. And in fact, for this project, my friends, and this is everybody who's online here with me, whether you're online on YouTube or whether you're physically here in the class with me, you don't need TypeScript. If you want to work without TypeScript for the second half, it's totally fine. I've given you TypeScript because I think it's a really good choice to make, because I think it's going to give you good tooling and so on. And again, what I might do next week is talk about how to convert an Express to an API with TypeScript, but you really don't need to. You can follow the videos, and they're almost identical to what I've shown you already. All the hard parts have already been done for you with TypeScript in the first half of the semester. All right. So there's lots of videos to support your project. Let's take a look at those now. To take a look at that, what your content looks like. So I made a little message. I came out and I said a couple things. Let's go over this part first. I said a message today, and I'm going to go over it with you guys because it's truly important. I said, hey, welcome to the second half. And I said, you know, we're doing a group project now, and I want you guys to enroll in group sizes of 4 to 6 members. So again, no group sizes of 1. You can't work on your own. No exceptions to this rule. You can't have group sizes of 2 or group sizes of 3. You must have a group size of 4 to 6. And no group sizes of 7 are not acceptable. Again, if there's some other extraneous circumstance, you need an exception. You need to have a very super good reason, like a health reason why certain things have to happen and so on. And that's the only reason why I'll do any exceptions to these rules like normal. Okay, so that's kind of the stuff that I've sent you guys out. The other thing is that I said, you know, I kind of give you some suggestions on how to successfully form a strong team. And one of the things I said is make sure you select a role. Okay, so I said, like, these are the things that you must have. You must have at least a project manager, someone I'm going to be speaking to on a regular basis that's going to manage your project. You know, that's their main role, if you will, in addition to programming. By the way, one thing I want to tell you guys that everyone in this course is a programmer. Okay, so even though you have a role like project manager or lead software engineer or UI programmer or something else, you are all programmers. Okay, so what I said was the 3 things that I think all of your groups need to have are project manager, lead software engineer, and your web designer. And the reason why I recommend all those 3 things, and the other ones can be combined with the other roles, is that what it will do for you is it'll help you organize yourself and be successful doing this project. The project is a group project, not to drive you crazy, but because it'll make it easier for you to be successful, which is you know, what we want to get you guys to do, be successful. So if you notice what I said here, a project manager basically coordinates the deliverables. They're the designated submitter, someone who's going to submit to me because it's a group project. Only one person needs to submit on eCentennial, and then I will get the submission for the entire group. Right? They're also going to select a project management tool like I recommended, something like Jira or Trello or GitHub projects or Gitkraken boards or something. The big ones that I recommend are Jira. Let's look at Jira for a second. I kind of talked about this in the videos as well. Jira is I would say, world-class project management tool. It is not free. It is available for you to use. You know, to some limitations, you can try it for free. But when it comes to managing your project with Jira, it's usually a cost of about $10. And it covers, I think, 10 people. So it's not that much. You can break it down. Please take a look if you're interested in Jira. What it does is it breaks down your project management into several different groupings. So for example, you start off with a to-do. You push an item to in progress, and then as an example, it kind of keeps pushing towards the right until you're finished that particular function. And again, I'll go into more detail about this on the video that I've already made on eCentennial, which I'll show you in a second. So that's Jira. The other popular one, which I highly recommend also, is Trello. Trello is actually made by the same people that make Jira, but it's kind of like a little or sister to Jira. This is kind of a completely free you know, kind of project management software that you can use to manage your projects. Many small groups and startups use Trello because they want to keep their costs low, and that's totally fine. However, I'll let you know that most groups, when you go into a professional environment like a bank or some kind of larger institution, they all use Jira. Jira is like the de facto standard out there. So to put it on your resume, you have an opportunity this semester, my friends, all of you, as well as the project manager, to use Jira and to learn Jira. I won't be covering how to use it, but you can learn how to use it. There's lots of tutorials online. There's even stuff on LinkedIn Learning, which you have access to via eCentennial and so on. You have access you should have access to LinkedIn Learning for free. And there's lots of online videos that can also help you do and use Jira. And they're very, very good. There's even stuff here on how to use Jira and so on. but there's a cost. And so for some people, that's prohibitive. No matter even if it's $1, it doesn't matter. People don't want to pay. I get it. And that's why I recommend as a number 2, Trello, right? A number 3 would be GitHub projects. So GitHub projects would be the third level, I would say. And GitHub projects is pretty cool because they've really done a lot of improvements on what they were offering before. It's free, as an example. They say project planning for developers, but there's actually some free components on this as well. So if you look at any GitHub repository, again, GitHub projects are free to go. Do I recommend them right now? Not as much as Trello and Jira. I recommend staying with these 2 things first. So that's the one thing I said here in the video. So, or in the little notes. So pick one, and that's the role of the project manager. They're not the leader. Okay, I'm not going to say that they're the leader of the project, but they're the people that are going to connect with me. They're going to be the single point of contact, if you will, for the professor, which is me. All right, in this particular case. So you'll be working with me. You'll be the single point of contact wherever you are as a project manager, and then I'll work with you to make sure that your team has everything, submitted. One thing to note is, please do not accept this role if no one else wants you to do it, or anyone, I don't want to do it, and I don't want to do it. Hey, Tom, you do it. And then Tom decides, yes, I'm going to do the role because no one else wants to do it. That is a terrible reason to take on the role of a project manager. You should be a project manager because you want it, right? And you should be a leader because you want it. And it is sometimes a thankless role because you have to kind of gather people together, and it's very challenging. It's a tough role because you have to basically manage everybody to make sure everyone produces what they're supposed to produce. Okay, so that is your project manager, and that is a must-have. The other one is a project is structured. They should get 2 votes in your meetings instead of maybe 1. Okay, and that's what I recommend. The other one that I recommend is web designer. And in web designer, you're like, wait, I'm not a designer, Tom. I'm here to do programming. Yes, you are. But they're the people that are going to be basically thinking about the style. They're going to be developing and maintaining a style guide, thinking about user experience, all that kind of stuff. How is this thing that we're making together going to look? How is it going to feel for the user? Those kind of things. And when it comes to design, the feel, the aesthetics of the project, it's up to them. They get 2 votes instead of 1. So that's kind of the separation. The subsidiary or auxiliary roles, which you can assign to anyone else, as well as some of these people. Please don't mix these roles up. I would recommend these 3 roles be different people. Okay, please don't have the project manager be also the lead software engineer, be the web designer. That would be a very bad decision on your parts. Why? If there's one person that can do more than one of these things, that means it's their project and you're just riding along. And that's not the exercise here. The exercise here is you're kind of combining together to reduce the load of this project, because this can be quite a hefty project when it comes to pulling assets together, creating your own look and feel, all that kind of stuff. Remember, there are no tech demos that I'm going to go with you for. I'm not going to share stuff with you in terms of, hey, here's how you do this. No, you know how to do it all at this point. Now you're actually, putting everything together and creating your own thing. All right, so that's something that you're going to do. You can try it, Katarina. I'm not sure how free it is and how many people it supports, or if it supports up to 6 people. If it's true, and if they've moved in that direction, yay, use Jira, right? The which? They allow you to do how many people?
I think 10.
Awesome. That's fantastic. If they allow that, then all the power. You do that and create the project, and that's awesome. Thank you for that. So let's go back to this. So, but what if, as an example, you are not one of these people? You're not a project manager. You're not a lead software engineer. You're not a web designer. What do? You could be in charge of UI programming. So, you're the front end. You create your front end pages. You wire up each page, make sure each page functions as it should, all that kind of stuff. You could be a UI programmer. There's also a requirement for database programmers, right? I mean, if you're a database person and you want to manage the classes and schemas and all that kind of stuff, you can certainly kind of branch off and manage MongoDB Atlas, access to that, and work with the lead software engineer, as an example, to manage the database, the model, all that kind of stuff, as well as other things, other programs. So that can be kind of a specialization. There's also room for a security programmer, someone who's going to manage, the authentication strategy and so on. And then finally, if you're none of these, or if you want to combine, let's say you only have 4 people in your group, you can combine some of these together. And you could also be called or classified as a generalist programmer, someone who is going to assist other people with programming. Okay, so that is what I recommend. Again, these 3, I would say, are highly important jobs that you should separate into different roles, right? Different people, not the same people here. And these roles can be combined with the other roles, or maybe even make other roles. If you only have, let's say, 5 people in the group, you can have one person that's a UI programmer and database programmer, another person that's a security programmer, and maybe just generalist that helps along with everything else. So again, minimum group size 4, maximum group size 6. That's the first takeaway. Second takeaway, right? Connect with people you know that you want to work with and enroll in the same group. Some people, remember, you cannot unenroll if you've enrolled in the wrong group or you are a rando. You've enrolled in a random group with another group of people. I will unenroll you because guys and girls out there, you need to know the people that you're enrolling with. You can't just randomly enroll in a group and expect that they're going to accept you, right? You need to talk to people, right? Which means there's different ways of doing that. One way is I've shared a Discord group with you guys, a Discord server, right? So the COMP229 Discord server that I have live as an example, and I will show you that right now. So some people are already having conversations, and let me just show you that right now. You should be able to see this. You can see that there are some discussion boards or some stuff that's off topic. This is the stuff from last time we were together. You can see this is from earlier this semester or from last year, those kind of things. I've also created let me just go back to discussions. I've also created some groups, some for voice channels. So I've made 5 groups for voice channels or voice groups for section 1. So if you're in section 1, you can certainly combine and connect with people here on Discord instead of using Teams or some other, way of connecting. I think Discord's a great way of connecting and conversing with people, right? Same thing with section 2 and section 3. Once I know what your group name is called, when you have physically connected with people, I will change these team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for different sections as an example so that it reflects your group name, whatever that is, okay? Again, if you're looking for group members just like Alex and Tang, kind of go up and ask for other people if they're looking for group members. I think this is great. If anyone is looking, you can combine this way and meet people. You can always look also at their videos. People have posted videos about who they are and so on. But Discord, I highly recommend Discord for meeting other people, and we're going to meet on Discord. When it comes to our weekly meetings, when it comes to our weekly meetings, I'm probably going to meet you on Discord or create some kind of room on Zoom where you and I can have a conversation about how you're doing and all that stuff. So again, one thing that I like a lot is always keep a good team together. So if you've worked with someone in the past or a bunch of people, keep working with those people, right? If you've never worked with somebody before, as an example, worst case scenario, you are randomly, it could be a good experience, could be a bad experience. Some people don't like to do work when they're in groups, and that's a big issue. We're going to try and take care of that together with some tools. But again, it's, it happens. People try and ride and do things for free. The thing is, it says here that for this project, you cannot work with any student outside of your section. I need to modify this for you guys for sections 2, 3, and 4 because you're all combined into one. I'm okay with you guys working together. So if you're in section 2, 3, or 4, I'm perfectly fine with you connecting with anybody in that section because this is kind of a combined section for you guys in the first and second half of the semester. However, if I go back and if you notice for section 1, these guys, right? These guys are not combined, they're separate. So these guys have to work with each other. Only people in section 1 can only work with other people in section 1. However, in groups in section 2, 3, and 4, you can mix and match, and I'm totally fine with that. And that's just a logistics perspective. I wish I could combine these two things and make them one. I can't because people in section 1 had another professor in the first half of semester, and I can't combine those people in this big combined section, and that's just part of my limitation. So that's just what we have to do. All right, so that's what this says. So you can't combine with any other groups from other sections. That means only for section 1. If you're section 1, that's true. Okay. Worst case, what if you're really shy or you don't have a team member, and if you can't find anybody by this week, let me know, and then I'll try and connect with people on Discord and try and find you a group. I'll try, okay? But really, it's on you to try and figure this out, not me, okay? Task 3, once you've connected with people and you've done some group forming, you've enrolled in a group, the next piece is complete the team contract document. That needs to happen this week. It's due on Friday at midnight. It's not so far away at all, actually. And what is this team contract document? We'll talk about this in a second, but it's a living document that binds all team members together. And what I want you to do in it is there's going to be some highlighted areas in the team contract that I need you to replace. Think about this as your manifesto, the reason why you're good. You're also going to mention what you do if a member is unproductive, as an example, because there might be a member that's unproductive. You can't fire anybody, but you can let me know and they'll just get 0. All right, that's pretty much what's going to happen if they don't do that, right? So there's not a binding contract, but what we try and do is, what you're trying to say is, I promise to work on the project and be an equal partner. That's what you really want to try and say with this contract. If you don't sign the contract, or if the group member doesn't show up for meetings or something like that, project managers and whoever you are, I like to tell you this, if they don't show up for meetings, I'm going to ask you who the project managers are out there, then, feel free to say that they're not there and they'll get 0 if they don't show up. Or we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so that is our first session this week is today. So this is for, you guys are, if I'm not wrong, group 3, right? Group 2 is after this one at from 6:30 to 8:30 tonight. That's group 3. Group 1 is on 10:30 to 12:30 on Wednesday. I have them. And group 4 is from 2:30 to 4:30 on Wednesday. But I'm only making one of these recordings live like this, synchronous and live on YouTube for all groups. All right. So the things I'm talking about for you, it applies to everybody. I'm not going to repeat myself, well, other than us meeting together physically like we do synchronously every week. Right. And part of that is, did you form a group? I'm going to ask you guys, did you form a group by Wednesday? If you're here with me on Wednesday, are you having any issues? Can I assist you? And then did you enroll in the wrong group? Can I unenroll you? Can I do those kind of things? That's my job more or less this week, and getting you to know what this project is all about. Okay, so that's the piece of mail that I sent you. Please read it. I've gone over the highlights of it, and I've done it on the YouTube video so that you guys are clear how important this is to kind of organize yourselves, or else it just will be way more difficult for you to be successful on this project. Okay, so that is this piece. This eCentennial stuff really goes into a lot of detail about Angular. If you're interested in watching, the videos for Angular, I've put together videos on how to, kind of use Angular as a front end and all that kind of stuff. And this week, it really talks about how to use Angular separately from the backend, which is your server. And there are several videos. You can see it spans several hours. All right, so it's not like 30 minutes. It's like several hours. If you want to learn how to use Angular, it's here for you. However, there might be an occasion where you decide that you don't want to do this, or you want to use React. If you want to use React for your project, that's on you. I don't have videos here for React. It's only for Angular, but I think they're pretty good, and they're still very relevant because even though we're at, I believe, Angular 11 or 12 at this point, it's okay, even though this is covering Angular 9 because it moves so quickly. The concepts are identical. All right. Next, let's take a look at a couple of things. Let's take a look at this part here, which is Team Project Overview, mandatory. Let's take a look at this piece, right? So team project overview, there is a video that goes into details about what this is. And it also talks about, how to do reporting and submission details on how to do that. Let's take a look at the team project overview. Now, one thing it doesn't have it doesn't have any dates, which is good. This final team project, guys, is worth a whopping 55% of your final grade. This is not something to laugh at or ignore. All right. So please don't say, well, it's okay. I did great in the first half of the semester. Then I'm going to be good even if I just stop now. No, you'll fail. Don't do that, please. You need to finish this project in order for you to be successful in this course. Okay. There is no way around it. You can't choose not to do it. Okay. You need to do it. And that's part of what you're doing. And I basically talk about your team contract. Again, it says teams formed 4 to 6 members, specialty roles selected. You select a specialty role. You select a project. There's 3 types of projects that I will allow. Only 3 types, okay? There's no random project that you're going to make. I've had a group last year that came up with their own random project and they got 0. Please, guys, don't do that, okay? You don't have a choice to make whatever you want. You have a choice to make one of these 3 types of projects, and it's your choice which one you want to select, okay? And why? Because it's going to be like as like. It's got to be your own. It's got to be, you have to use your own assets, right? That means your own assets that you source on your own, okay? There's no theming. You can't go to Theme Forest or buy a theme from some site. It's got to be your own theming. That's why you have 4 to 6 members. It's got to look like your own, all right? So that's the first thing. So part 1 is your team contract. That is due at the end of this week at midnight, okay? So this is you signing up for this. Let's take a look at this document that I'm talking about because the team contract document is a separate document that you need to fill out. Let's take a look at this, all right? So I'm going to go back to assessments. Under assignment, you'll see the document, okay? So if you go to the team contract project part 1, it's available for you right now. It's due, again, you can see July 9th. Let's see what July 9th is. That's Friday. See where Friday is? Friday at midnight. That's July 9th, guys, right? It's just around the corner. And if I look there and if I open it up, let's edit it together. And you can see what this looks like. There is 2 things that are part of it. One is the contract template. Okay, so please, let's open that up together. If you download it, by the way, all these are things you can download. So if I download the template, let's take a look at the template here. This is what it looks like. Okay, it looks like this, right? So COMP229. Notice I'm in dark mode, but even if you're not in dark mode, you'll see these highlighted areas. These highlighted areas need to be replaced with real information. Okay, so the first part is members. Who are they? And what is your team name? In fact, this should be highlighted as something you need to replace. You need to come up with your own team name, please. Okay? And then whatever your members are, 4 to 6 people. Minimum, you should share your email. You should also include your student name and number, your student number in here, as well as other information. Things like your Discord handle and that kind of stuff is also, they're also a really good piece of information here. I also talk about team expectations. Please watch the video for more details about this. But this is the contract document that is due for you to be completed and signed by all of your team members by Friday. It's worth 5% of your final grade, guys. Please do not ignore this. It's due Friday, no extensions. Okay, so that is this one. That is your team contract. There's also the Project 1 team contract PDF document. And if you look there, and if I look at the PDF document, it goes into a lot more detail about what is due and what is recommended. There's 2 parts to the submission. One is your signed contract, and the other one is a team logo, which one of you is going to have to either create. If you're a designer, you can also slap together everybody's initials and make a very simple shape, just like you did when you made your own portfolio site. You can make this really super simple. I'm not looking for a professional grade graphic logo, just something that represents your team that needs to be original. So please don't take somebody else's logo and modify. Don't take Apple, turn it upside down, make it black and call it your own. We don't need you to do that. All right, I want you to make it your own logo, something that's really recognizable by you. All right, so that is what's due. This is the details of project part 1, which is your team contract, again, due week 8 by midnight. That's Friday at midnight. All right, so that is this part. Let's go back to what we talked about. That is what's due, and that's what's happening with your project part 1. But heck, what is this project about anyway? Because we really need to get a sense of what are you making, right? Because this is the stuff that we've talked about, right? Because we've been dancing around what you're making right now. There's 3 options, 3 things that you're going to be creating. Let's go back to the content for a second to get there. All right, so again, everything that you need is here up online. All the tools and the contract details, all that stuff is here. Let's take a look at that team project overview one more time. So I'm going to go back to this team project overview. It should say the first part. So part 1 is your team contract. Part 2 is your first release. Now, what are you making? You're actually going to do in your first release, that's due next week, all of your initial project structure and landing pages due next week. Your NoSQL database structure and model class is in place by next week. Your team GitHub repo set up by next week. Heroku next week. MongoDB Atlas or Firebase next week. Your external design document, which I've asked you to make by next week, which is kind of like a design document that basically shows, it's like a style guide that I've asked you guys to put together. Your agile tracking, so some kind of agile project management tool you're going to choose. And I want a backlog snapshot. That's going to be due next week, as well as your demo video of your first release, which is 10 minutes, done by you and your team. It could be one person that's narrating the entire video. I don't need everyone to speak, just your best speaker. That's what I'm looking for, your best speaker. And that's going to be due the end of week 9. That's next Friday at midnight. And then there's other releases, which I will go into again every week with you. But you can see that this is a few parts, 5 parts that are due. One thing that we have to talk about is what project are you doing? And it's all right here. What is this final team project anyway? I go into details here on eCentennial, but the thing to notice is that there's 3 different projects. Either a survey site, and for that you can look at sites that already exist, like SurveyMonkey. That might be something you want to create. Your bracket tournament website, okay, and you can look at another site that I like to look at called Challenge. Challenge does these brackets for tournaments. If you're someone who likes the soccer stuff that's going on, you can see that people use these brackets for teams where they compete together to find a winner. That is what the tournament management site is about. There's already an example here in Challenge, and you can do something similar if you like for yourself. But you need to create all the graphics. You need to create the page and organize yourself completely on your own. It has to be your own graphics and your own style. All right, so that's for everything that we're making here. So tournament site. The other one that I've asked you guys to do, so again, there's 3: survey site, a bracket tournament site, and an incident management site. Think about this as a ticketing site. If you have an incident, some kind of problem, your power goes down, you have an IT group that you would call. Let's say, for example, you're working for RBC and you can't connect to your VPN, right? As an example, who would you call? You'd call the IT group, right? When you call the IT group takes your information, creates a ticket for you, and gives you a ticket number, and then they manage the ticket for you. They assign a technician to fix the problem, or they might help you right there with the first level technician. If they can't fix your problem, they refer to second level. That's incident management. Now, it also says one more thing. It says another project approved by the instructor. Guys, unless you have a really awesome layout plan that you want to do that meets the requirements that I've put out here for other groups, I'm probably going to say no, okay? Unless you can think of something that's awesome that you want to do, and you have to propose that to me at least at the latest by Friday, because I need to know what that is. We can meet between now and Friday and we can connect on Discord as an example, somewhere where you can see each other, or even on on Zoom. However we do this, we gotta. If you're looking for a custom project, I need to approve it, and most likely, it's very detailed. I don't recommend it because it's going to make a lot of work for you guys to do this, because you can't compare yourselves with anybody else. It's got to be something that you're doing on your own. One thing to notice is it must be hosted live on Heroku, on Azure, on some web kind of provider, and it must be a node server. You cannot use a WordPress server or PHP on the back end or some other kind of technology. It must be a node server, and most likely with an express middleware. Okay, it must be those things. So please don't try and make some other weird technology stack. It will not be acceptable. You can't use .NET, okay, or Python or anything else as a backend. You need to use the stuff talked about this semester. All right, that's why we've been training you this semester to get this done. People have asked some really weird stuff in the past, and the answer is no. You can't use another technology stack. You need to do this same thing that we've kind of talked about before. There are some common requirements that I go over in the video for each project. One of them that I see some of you miss on your own projects is internal documentation. Make sure that all the student IDs of all the developers on all the main pages are in comments at the very minimum for this part right here, part 2A, so that you get marks for your internal documentation. Otherwise, you won't. There is a mark for all this stuff, right, individually, right? And one thing that you'll also be doing that's going to be due in the first, in part 2, which is your first release, is I'm looking for a detailed description of your web application. This is an external document. Let's step back for a second. Remember that I asked you for 4 to 6 people? There's a reason for this, because there's lots of little work that everyone has to do. And I don't want everyone to be destroyed by this work. I want you guys to work together so that it is doable. And to do that, you need to delegate some of that work. So project managers, whoever you are out there, please delegate some of this work to different people on your team so everyone can, have a good time with this thing. There's a lot of really cool things with this thing, and you can use this project, this little thing you're going to create together with your team, this web application, as part of your portfolio, which is something that you can show your prospective employers and get an awesome job as a full stack developer, which is what I hope you do. Okay, so that is your external document that you need to create for next week. It includes a company logo, table of contents, a detailed description of your web application, a wireframe section. This is kind of like a drawing of each of your main pages, what they look like, with some arrows and labels of what everything is. A screen capture section of areas where you have screenshots, especially for your landing pages and all those things. So one part is, here's what your stuff will look like, as an example, as a plan, and then your screenshots are your actual. Some people try and do funny things like make your screenshots first, you make your stuff, and then you go backwards and do your plan. That is incorrect, and it's so easy to see that you've done that. You'll just lose marks for this section. Please don't do that. And the other thing that you want to think about in your external document as you go, because you won't complete the entire external document in one go, it's a living document that you're going to be working on throughout the entire project, is features that could be added if you had more time, or if you had less constraints. You're going to share your stuff on GitHub, and you're going to make a short video presentation for the final presentation that is going to take around 15 minutes to go through all the details of your project. So that's what you're making this semester. It is one of the 3 sites, and I give you details of each of these things: survey site, and I kind of recorded this already online for you. Attorney bracket site, these are the options, or an incident management site. Again, when it comes to difficulty level, if you're going to ask me for a recommendation, if you're new, as an example, Katarina, I'm going to answer that question in a second. If you're new and you're someone or a group of people who are not quite as comfortable with this technology, then stick to the survey site. I think it's fairly straightforward. You have to, kind of do some design work, but for the most part, it's fairly straightforward in terms of what you're going to make. That's survey site option. If you want a bit of a challenge, then hit the attorney bracket site. There's more user interface items. There's some other back-end functionality you're going to have to program and so on. But it's a little bit more challenging in some ways because it's not the same simple structure as a survey site. And finally, if you want a huge challenge, if you're someone you get a lot of really awesome programmers on your team and you want something that you want to stand out, then you can certainly try incident management. I highly don't recommend incident management if you don't want a challenge. There's a lot of details here. It's way more difficult to do this one than any of the other ones to pull it off. So please do not do this. For example, if you only have a team of 4. If you have a team of 4 people, this is just undoable. You need a full group of people that want to do this, that are motivated, and that know what they're doing when it comes to programming. Fully, like a good high resource team is what you need for this one. Okay. So don't try and pull this off on your own or with a group that's smaller than 6 people. This could be done, these two could be done with 4 to 6 people each, tourney bracket site and a survey site. So groups of 4 to 6 are okay for these. And this one would be the easiest one to do. What I'm looking for from the survey is keep the options low. In other words, I don't need you to make a million types of surveys. Like keep it so that it's 1 or 2 possibly survey templates. In other words, maybe you're going to allow multiple choice and agree, disagree type questions. But I don't need you to make it so that it is, or true, false, as an example. But you don't have to have every different type of question, right? That is too detailed. Remember, what you're doing at the end of this, no matter what site you're making, you're creating a template. You're creating a prototype. And what I mean by that is, maybe if you wanted to take this further with your team outside of class after this semester, and you wanted to take it further and make your own site, that's something you can do on your own. But for me, all I'm looking for is a really good, solid prototype, which means it doesn't have to be super detailed like this, but has every kind of site like SurveyMonkey. I think SurveyMonkey is a great thing to look at. Let's take a look at SurveyMonkey. All right, as an example, but by no means am I looking at this level of detail. All right, so the level of detail that SurveyMonkey allows you to do, which allows you to do things like, different surveys of different types, more than just, these things. Obviously, what the survey should allow you to do is modify the survey question and the options if you do multiple choice. Or you should allow any user to do that kind of stuff, right? Because you're making something that's flexible. You're not going to make a single survey. You're not going to make a survey. You're going to make a site to make surveys. That's what a survey site is, okay? So if you only make one survey, you fail. That's not what I'm asking you to do. That's like not part of what you're doing. Okay, I don't need you to make the content. I need you to make a site that creates the content. That's what this whole thing is. So, and you might think that's really hard or you don't want to do that. That's fine. Move to one of the other options. The kind of a brackets tournament type site where you create a tournament, or if you really are crazy and you have a high resource team, you can always look at something like Remedy, incident management. So Remedy incident management is kind of like the de facto standard in incident management software that's out there. BMC is a very large organization that creates an online ticketing system. You can look at products that they have, right? So of what they have. So Remedy is just one of the incident management systems that are out there. And if we took a look at some of that, and there might be some examples of products. So if we looked at, as an example, let's see what they have here for, so this is, service, software as a service. They also have application workflow and orchestration, as well as operations management and other things. You can also take a look at all their products and what they do. Here's Remedy Force. That's what it's probably called now. And what does this look like? You can see that you're taking a ticket. You can watch a little video on what this does. It is very detailed, and I don't expect you to do this because this would be way more than I expect, but it has elements of this. So if you really want to push yourself, BMC's Remedy is probably a good example of kind of like the de facto standard in IT project management out there. Okay. There's other ones out there too, but this is really good. Okay. So let's move back to what we were talking about with the project itself. So again, 3 different surveys, 3 different types of site options. You choose one at the end of the day. And then at the bottom, you can see where all your marks are coming from. Again, I'll be using a rubric for this for each of your releases, right? Where you have some kind of UI, interface design, marks, some functionality, some site structure, and so on. This will be broken down for your entire site. and each part is broken down into smaller pieces, okay? So the first part, and again, if you look at the schedule, right, and this is very high level as a schedule, part 1 is your contract, part 2 is your first release, which is due next week, and it includes all these piece parts, okay? Part 3 is your authentication release, part 4 is your final release, and part 5 is your final presentation and demo. Please don't discount this. It's worth 15% of your final grade. In fact, the final release and the final presentation are worth a total combined value of 30% of your final grade. And in order for you to get to your final release, you have to step through some of these. This is group work, my friends. All right, so this is not something you can do on your own. On that, there's other components that you're going to be doing by yourself. Okay, so let's go back to week 8 for a second. So, yeah. So one thing that we have in our course outline and everything else that we have here, you can see there's activities. It talks about Angular. It talks about if you wanted to do a lab on how to learn Angular, there's lots of work to be done here. Videos on Angular and how to do this kind of stuff. Your team project. And then there's a section here called project documents. Okay. So one thing it says is you will submit a weekly report. Each week you are working on the team project. And then for every release, starting not this week, but next week, you're going to be also filling out something called a peer evaluation form, right? So there's one of these as well. Let's take a look at these project documents one more time. So you can see I've got the weekly report. And again, you can see that this is dated fall of 2020. This is when this was created. Let's take a look at that weekly report template, where basically what you're saying is this. Okay, here's the week. Example would be week 8, right? What your team name is, what your student ID is, your student name. Did you attend the weekly meeting? Because my expectation outside of this meeting that we have here every time we get together, my friends, is you have your own meeting outside of this, at least a couple hours a week, right? Where you meet and work together, right? Whether it's through Discord or through Teams or through Zoom or something else, you guys get together and work together on your output, because you need to do merging. You need to merge stuff together when it comes to GitHub. You need to do all those kind of things, right? So you need to meet. So did you attend the meeting that your project manager set up? Yes or no? And if you did, what happened? If you didn't, what happened, right? And then did you complete the work you were assigned or that you assigned yourself? For example, let's say if you said, hey, I'm the lead software engineer and I'm going to set up the GitHub repository, then that's your self-assigned work. That's what you're going to do. Your project manager knows about that, and they agree you've kind of completed it, and how many hours that you've completed approximately for your team. If I see hours like 0, I didn't attend, or whatever, you will lose marks every single time. These things, these individual marks, there's individual marks associated with both your weekly reports and your peer review. So if you don't fill these out, this is on you guys individually to do, okay? And they're going to be prompted. Right now, I've already released your first weekly report that is due next week on Friday, as well as I also have your first peer review, which is due next Friday. Okay, so we'll take a look at that in a second. So those are the project documents. It says fall 2020 because that is the template that we made. What is this peer evaluation form and how does this work? Well, again, your peer evaluation form is pretty straightforward. What you do is you kind of name the people in your group, including yourself. So there's me, let's say there's Alex and Mark and Greg and Daryl, as an example, that are here in my group. I'm making these names up, as an example. How much did they contribute? And if there's somebody that I see here that's contributing 0 or very low, guys, whoever you are, I will remove marks from your group release. So if your group did really awesome, I love your release, it's amazing, and you guys got 90%, guess what? You can get 0 for this release if you don't contribute. It's your contribution that counts. It's not the fact that you're part of a group. If you don't do anything in your group, you get 0. And I need people, to kind of state this. If be honest. Be honest with your group member. Don't surprise them. Don't say, hey, we just randomly gave you a 0. You're going to give somebody a 0 because they're not participating. They're not coming up to your meetings. they're not doing what you've asked them to do or what they've agreed to do on their own, right? So please make sure that you fill out this peer evaluation form. It's required by all team members, and it is an individual mark you get for this. Okay. Let's take a look at the assessments one more time to see when these are due, right? So, project part 1 due July 9th at midnight. Project part 2, which is your first release with all those little things I talked about. It's a group assignment, okay? Both of these are group assignments, due July 16th by midnight, okay? So too are project part 2, your first peer review, which is an individual submission. That's also due next week by midnight, as well as project part 2, your first weekly report that's due next week by midnight, okay? So those are the releases. They're all released for you. Project part 3 is not released right now. I will release that next week, and I'll probably release the rest of it as well so you can see all the stuff that's due. Right now, you have 4 little submissions you have to make for this to be done. All right, let's go back to some of the questions I got before we move on. So Katrina asked, do we need to use some specific tools like Figma or Miro for the wireframe section? Figma is awesome, but I'm not going to require you to do that. Katrina, you can use whatever you want. You can even try it out yourself with Paint. Doesn't matter, as long as it's detailed enough so that I can understand what your plan is. But Figma is awesome, okay? And so is Miro. For the assignments task to be complete, do we write about general work on the project or on the product in weekly report? So in the weekly report, you work about what you did for this week. And it could be on the project, on your meetings that you had, things that you are contributing. What did you do this week is really what I'm asking you with a weekly report. In the peer review, you're saying, what did my team members do? Do I agree? Did they do anything? Is there somebody that's just not working out, that's not contributing, that's not attending meetings? Those are the things that I want you guys to tell me, all right, when you guys attend. All right, so that is your stuff. So it's up and running. It's kind of live online. So please make sure that you combine with somebody and, kind of form groups. And those 2 individual pieces are due next week on Friday at midnight. Hopefully that answered your question, Kathleen. All right, so back to this. So yeah, there's lots and lots of stuff to do. It's organizational week. It's team forming week. Let me talk about a little bit about team forming before I take questions and maybe even stop for the day. There's not a lot for me to do. It's on you this week. And I'll talk about how to do a couple things and things that I recommend in the video. So one thing I want to talk about is this idea of team forming. And you may have seen something like this before. This is Tuckman's stages of team development. And team forming is what's happening this week. That's due on Friday. The way it works is there are several phases of team forming. And Tuckman, again, I would say an HR specialist, and he wrote some theory on business practices. And one of the things that he wrote about was team forming. And he talked about this idea, these phases that we move into. So when we first start forming a team, we have not a lot of agreement. The purpose isn't really clear about what we're doing. And you kind of go through this forming phase where you come together. Then you start to fight. That's what the storming piece means, storming. And what I mean by this is there's power struggles. Who's going to be the project manager? Who's going to be the lead software engineer? Who's going to be this? Who's going to be that? Who's not going to do any work? There are people like that, okay? That's the storming phase. Finally, there's norming, where you guys make some agreements. That's the contract that you're going to kind of put together, how you're going to manage things and so on, right? And you kind of delineate clear roles and responsibilities. Notice I put that here in the PowerPoint slide, right? As an example, clear roles and responsibilities. That's norming. Then you start performing. You start actually creating the stuff that you have to do, and you do that for the remainder of the semester. And finally, there's adjourning, which is where you break apart and you say goodbye to everybody. Thank you so much. Love working with you. Hopefully to work with you in the future, right? So that's the 5 stages. So forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning, which is the 5 phases of, or Tuckman stages of team development. All right, so that's what I want you to think about. This is a great way of thinking about things. One thing to notice also for Tuckman, and he also talks about in terms of effectiveness versus performance. Notice that in terms of effectiveness, you might start off pretty high, but as you start, kind of storming, notice that your effectiveness as a team goes down because you're fighting, right? You're trying to figure out who's doing what and all that stuff. As you start going into norming and then performing, not only does your effectiveness goes up, but your performance as a team over time improves into the point where you're performing together as a team. This is where I'd like you guys to be as soon as possible. So what I want you to do this week is do forming, storming, and norming as fast as possible. I know it's not always this way. I know sometimes what happens is it takes an extra week for you guys to go through, and sometimes what happens also with this this cycle of team development is you go backwards. You start forming, you get into storming, you fight, you kind of figure out who's doing what. You go into norming again, then you go back to storming again because you don't agree, and then you go back to norming. Some people leave, and so there's more forming done because some people leave from one team to the other and that kind of stuff. And by the way, on that, what if you really hate your team? You can't stand your team. They don't treat you right, or you feel you should be part of another team. Well, how we're going to do this is you're not going to be able to leave your team until each release is complete, right? So I'm only going to accept one move from everybody. So that means that going back to our schedule, right, then if we look at our schedule and if we look at, let's go back to our content for a second, right? And again, if you look at week 8, all the content for everything that I've talked about here is here. Here's your team project component, right? And notice that there is the team project overview that I've looked at. This is all inside of your eCentennial shell, right? So again, notice that your team contract, so you make a contract and you agree to stuff and you want to work with everybody. You start working on your first release and you realize this team sucks. I don't want to work with them, or maybe they don't like me, or there's some people that are just not working out. You can't change until you're done your first release, and then I would allow you to do one change between your first release and your authentication release. So if you're going to jump to another team, you can't leave a group on your own. You can let me know, and then what I'll do is I'll remove you from the team as long as I get permission and there's room. There must be room in that team. Remember, you can't go beyond 6 members, as an example. If they accept you, if the team knows that you're leaving, that there's got to be a bunch of little things that happen, you got to let me know, right? Then you can join this other team as long as they agree and as long as I agree, okay? That'll be the first and only time you can move from first release to authentication release. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to join from your authentication release into your final release. So there'll be no moves after your this one move you can do. So from first release to authentication release, I will accept one move. You can jump ship and go somewhere else. You can form a new team, whatever you're going to do. But after that, there's no more moves because you need time to do this again, right? You got to form up again. You do some more storming. There's going to be some more norming. It's going to waste a lot of time. This is all waste of time. This is low performance where you go into a low performance mode again. We don't want to do all that. So please, only one move. And again, only if it makes sense. Okay, so that is individual components as well as your project components. Any questions outside of the stuff that I've asked for people on YouTube that are watching right now, as well as for people that are here physically in class today, which there's only 8 of you, I see. Any questions from you guys? If you don't have questions now, you might have questions later, but at the end of the day, please connect with me. All right. If you have a problem, if you have a question, if you have a concern, I want to be able to help out. That's my job for this whole process, is trying to help you to move forward and to create the project that you're going to be very proud of by the end of semester, not just for marks. Okay. Thanks, Alex. So going back to that then, let's go back to this piece. So again, next week when we get together, right, in the videos, it's going to talk how to migrate Express to an API. If and only if you're going to be doing Angular or React, do you have to do this. If you're sticking with Express, which I suspect most of you will, you do not have to convert your Express app, your server, to an API. You don't have to. You just have to create a brand new project. It's your own web application that you're making. All right. And that's your first release is due next week on Friday at midnight. Okay, that's what's due. The rest of this document, right, which is up on eCentennial in different piece part form, talks about Angular, its history, what is it from, how it works. What is Angular? It's a front-end framework, and it combines with Express and Node.js on the back end to produce a full stack application, which is very nice, right? It's also very complex. So, it's Angular, I would say, is a framework by programmers for programmers, right? It's not as easy as React. React is made, for non-programmers at first. Now, of course, it's much more complex. There's a lot of complexities around React as well. But in the beginning, React was much simpler than using Angular. Now, I would say that React is probably the more popular framework, but Angular is still pretty awesome because it has a lot of cool functionality. If you want to make a really complex application, Angular is your choice. If you want to make a really great application that looks great and it's not as complex as Angular, maybe something simpler like we're doing this semester, React might be a great choice as well. And there's also Vue and other front-end frameworks you can choose from that I won't be covering this semester. All right, so going back to this, any other questions before we move on? Burhan says, can we use Sass? Absolutely. Sass is awesome to use. And if you're using, let's take a look at Sass for a second. So there's Sass and Compass. Usually they kind of come together. Sass, we may have talked about this before, which is it's syntactically awesome style sheets. That's what it stands for. It actually allows you to do things like it also needs, by the way, to be transpiled in some ways because Sass isn't recognized by browsers. You have to convert it to a CSS file. So there is a process to use to create kind of transpile or compile your Sass files into CSS. Okay, so it's kind of really interesting to do. Love it. It's great. It's mature. It's awesome. And it allows you a lot of control when it comes to presentation, your presentation side of the house compared to regular CSS. I think it's still awesome. So yes, the answer is you can use Sass. No problem. Anyone else have any questions? Aaron says, do we need to write test case for a project? No. Nope. I wouldn't want to do that to you. Again, this is not a project management course. However, I am asking you to do, to use, some kind of agile methodology for this. And I know that you haven't been taught necessarily, some of you, how to do agile. But one thing to note is that we want to think about what a couple of things are. Backlog, what is that? You're going to see some terminology for your project. The backlog is every feature, as an example, that you can possibly think of for your application, put in a big list. Okay. Alex asks, can we use Bootstrap? Absolutely. You can use Bootstrap, you can use Font Awesome. Any of the tools that I've shared with you already, including Sass, as an example, they're totally fine to use. You don't have to make your own CSS framework because that's not the exercise. I want a web application of your own. That's what I'm looking for, using the tools that I've already shown you. So absolutely, Alex, you can use Bootstrap. Any other questions? So going back to that then, let's take a look at a project, like with GitHub. So if I looked at GitHub and if I went to Centennial from last time, we were using COMP229 week 6B. This is one that I share with you. Notice that each project, each repository also has this thing called projects, right? So if you click on projects, you can create a new project, right? And what it does, if I create a project, you can name the project here. So it's built into GitHub. For example, I can call this the Express project. Let's call this Express. I'm just going to show you how to do it with GitHub as well, just in case you want to do that. You can choose a template if you want. One of them is you can use Kanban boards, right, as an example, or so basic Kanban style boards that you can use, automated Kanban boards, right, or other ones. By the way, Jira also gives you this ability to use Kanban boards, right? So let's just use basic Kanban, right? And then we'll say create project. So what this will do is when you make the Kanban board, this is what they look like. Now, it doesn't matter what project management tool you use. If you use Trello or Jira or whatever, what you're going to see is a series of these lanes, okay, for your project management. Okay, so let's just get rid of this one. So I'm just going to delete the note for a second. Yes, I do. I want to get rid of this. And I want to get rid of some cards. Let's delete these notes here too, as well as this one. Okay, so notice what we have. We have these different stacks, right? I have a to-do stack. I have an in progress stack. I have a done stack. This is cool, but when I make columns like this, these columns where I can have different things, one thing I recommend to you is have yourself produce something like a backlog column. So let's make a backlog column, right? Again, you can do this in any tool, whether it's Jira does it for you automatically. You can also do this with Trello and other tools. Let's create a column. One thing you can do with the columns is move them around. So I can make the backlog kind of show up here first. So backlog is your, and you can actually rename this. You can call this your project backlog. So this represents every single feature you can possibly think of in cards. And you can start putting new cards in here. I can add a note. So for example, when you look at the project requirements, and again, let's take a look at those project requirements for a second, right? So let's take a look. One of the project requirements is the initial project structure and landing pages. Okay, so that could be a thing. So if I was going to make something, I could say, let's add this and say, as an example, landing pages, right? This is very high, by the way. And when we start thinking about a feature like this landing pages feature could be actually something called a epic, because it can have multiple things. Notice that I can add any of these notes that I want. Think about these as features that I want to add into my site, right? Let's go back to that one again. And I have, let's see what else it says. So landing pages, the NoSQL database structure, and model classes. Those are two different things. So let's put that in there. Again, just as an example, guys, I don't expect you to follow along or do anything. So again, I can say something like, NoSQL database setup, and we can put in here MongoDB Atlas, right? As an example, that's a thing that I want to do. That's a task, if you will. These are like task boards, if you will, right? That's what they are. And some kind of model classes, model class creation, right? We can say which model class if I'm doing. If I'm making a survey, how are you going to lay out your survey site? That's another thing you have to think. If you're making a survey, are you going to have one, collection, that is going to house everything, right? Are you going to make a separate collection for each of the question types? Like, how are you going to do it? You've got to think about how to use a NoSQL database to do this, right? So model class creation. Let's call this, if I was going to make some kind of survey site, maybe the survey questions collection. Survey questions collection, right? For the survey questions collection, right? And I can add that in. There might be other model classes. I'm not going to go into all of them, but let's organize these into some organization. Let's say, for example, I think the landing pages should come first. NoSQL database should come second. I can also do things like I can add, other things in here. One thing that this doesn't allow us to do so much is it doesn't really allow us any real color. You can add with Trello labels and colors and all that kind of stuff, but that's your project backlog. You put every single element that you can possibly think of for your entire project in the beginning in your project backlog. Instead of to do, you would rename this. I recommend renaming this to something like your sprint backlog. Think about your sprint, or you might maybe even better for us, because we don't have a lot of time for sprints, we'll call this the release backlog. Okay, how about that? All right. So if you set up a column that's called the release backlog is everything you want to do for this release. So let's say, for example, I want to do some of these, right? This is all of the things that I want to do in my project, including other stuff that I haven't mentioned, like all of this stuff, everything, all of these little features and everything else, everything that's mentioned here in the common requirements, as well as project specific requirements. You put all this down as features, break these down into smaller tasks to help people do them. That's what I recommend you do. And then what you do is from here, you say, okay, what am I going to do this release? And you pull those in. So I kind of pull them across this way, right? So these are the ones that I want to do in release. There's other stuff here. Obviously, there's not. Let's add one to show you that there might be. So somewhere down in the end, I might have some feature that I'm not doing this week. Like, for example, site security is functional. right? Functional site security. So let's add that in. Functional site security, right? Again, this is project management stuff, right? So we're not doing functional site security right now. I don't need site security for this one. All I need here is just some landing pages and my database setup and my model classes set up and other things that I talked about in my first release. So this is your release backlog, right? And then you have in progress. Let's suppose that I'm working with Alex, and Alex and I are working together in a team. And Alex says, well, you know what, Tom, I want to work on the landing pages. So he takes on those landing pages and we assign it to Alex, okay, as an example. And, notice that it goes from the left all the way to the right. Now, you're not going to go done. I recommend another level in here, another card in between, or another column in between in progress and done called testing. I recommend a testing column. And it's not a case, I'm not testing those kind of things. I'm actually just saying, test your project. Let's say, for example, I'm looking at my landing pages. I'm done. Alex says he's done. He pushes them into the testing column, and then someone else takes a look at these landing pages and says, you know what, Alex, you did a great job. They approve it, and then they move it into the done column. The done column is only for your release backlog, right? And you might also move things from the done column in your release. You might have a final column, which is like your final, completed. You might do something like this as well. Again, it's up to you how you set this up. But a lot of times we have these kind of columns here, right? So here's my completed column. So I'm done for this release. We kind of look at all the things that we wanted to do, make sure that everything is checked off that we wanted to complete. And then when we're done, and we're ready to move on, we wanted to close off the release, we put them all into completed. And the completed column has all the features for your entire project that have been completed, okay? That's how we use these boards. This is a Kanban board style, setup. And it doesn't matter whether you use, I'm just showing you here, GitHub projects, but whether you use this, Trello, or Jira, the movement from one column to the other is a drag and drop functionality, okay? So that's how it works. There's also one other column that I also like to add, and it's usually between the in progress and testing column, or the testing column and the done column. It's called blocked. And it's not a happy column, okay? The blocked column. Blocked means that you try to do something and you wanted to implement a feature, as an example, and you couldn't get it done. Maybe it's because you don't know how to do something. Example would be if I had something, there was a model class creation, not just for the survey question, but for the options. And it got blocked. You couldn't figure it out, right? People have challenges with this kind of stuff. So let's add that in. So I'm adding a note. So I'll say model class creation for survey question options. And you're like, wait, there's survey question options because I'm making a survey that has multiple choice questions. So the question itself, that's a, kind of a model class. And then they're like, wait, but I also have this other collection that is for survey question options, which is like A, B, C, D. You can also allow the user to enter those in as well. So that's part of your release backlog. But then as people are working on it, let's suppose that they just don't know how to create this one. So this might go in the blocked column, right? And when it happens to go in the block column, guess what happens? Either you try and fix it. It's something that was not done. As an example, you can't figure it out. You didn't have time to do it. Someone didn't do it. You assign it to somebody that didn't complete it, as an example. We can use a block column for this. Again, this is very loose. Every organization does this kind of stuff a little bit differently. But the idea is that we flag items that you cannot complete for either because you don't know how to complete them, you don't have a resource to complete them, or you messed up and you thought you completed it, but after testing, it just doesn't work. All right, so it's in the block column. And what happens is we put this back into the release backlog. We move this back into the release backlog for the next release. And normally, guys, if there's something that you couldn't get done in the block column, chances are you're losing marks, right? Because anything that's in the release backlog, as an example, should be something that you can complete and, that particular release. So for next week, some of these need to be completed, but implementation on how to make this all work properly is something you need to think about as a team. All right, so that is an example of a Kanban board. We can also do it with Trello. Let's log in with Trello, and I'll show you what this looks like really quickly. So I'll log in with Google. There we go. Sure. Again, you can see that, I may or may not have have a profile with them as well. Sure. It says name your workspace. I want to name mine, my last name's workspace, and I can send email invites to people that want to join. Let's make continue. It says try Trello business class for 30 days. Guys, if I'm going to try Trello for business, I recommend going with Jira. It's just more detailed and lots more functionality. Skip. And nice work. Yay, it's ready to go. Let's go. And you know what? Let's take a look at boards. And you can see that there's different templates here. Let's go with a Kanban template, and ta-da, it looks identical almost to what I've done with you guys. And that's what it would look like if you were going to use Trello. It's almost identical. You have some stuff in here that you want to do. You might have some things in your backlog. There's some design. There's to do, doing. There's a code review. Code reviews are really cool, where you kind of sit there and test between testing and done. You might have that, but you can create as many columns as you want here. Just like we did with GitHub pages and GitHub projects. Okay, so very, very simple. And it's the same thing. If I had an example task, as an example, I could take a task, describe it, and what I want to do is whatever the example task is, you can move it around from one place to the other. That's how it is. You just kind of drag and drop. Okay, so that is what Trello looks like, and Jira is very similar. Notice that it uses these. You can set up Jira in different ways. One of them is to use this Kanban board style setup, which I recommend to manage your releases. For this project, doing a full Jira sprint and so on might be a little bit too heavy-handed for what we're doing. I recommend something as simple as a Kanban board as an option. Okay, any questions around project management software that's required for your release coming up next week? Or anything else that we've talked about today? So again, this is the second part of semester. This half of semester is the project you're making. Remember that Friday, your team forming. If you need to be released from a team because you've kind of joined it incorrectly, I can remove you. Please see me after class. I'm going to stop recording now. And then whoever's here, I can adjust team sizes and that kind of stuff. Otherwise, guys, good luck for Friday. I'm going to stop recording here on YouTube, and then I will be available throughout the entire week. You can join again any of the sessions that were together, any synchronous session. I'll be here the entire week to help you guys manage your project and get going on your team structure. Otherwise, that's it for me, guys. I'm going to stop recording on YouTube, and I'll take questions from the people that are physically here. All right, so the YouTube stuff is done. Any questions from you guys? Whether